What we're looking at here is Operation Epic Fury, the start of war between the US and Iran. Alongside Israel, America launched attacks from air, land, and sea aimed at wiping out the Iranian regime, blowing up its ballistic missiles, and destroying its nuclear sites. Within 24 hours, much of Iran lay in ruins, its leader dead, its commanders killed, and its navy a smoldering wreck. But how exactly did this crucial phase of the war play out? We're going to examine the tapes and piece them together with what we know about US forces in the region to find out. Here is Iran, and here's where we know US forces were positioned before the war broke out. There was the Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier and its strike group, including Arleigh Burke missile destroyers in the Arabian Sea, the Gerald R. Ford carrier and its strike group, also including destroyers, in the Eastern Mediterranean. Then fifth-generation F-22 fighters and F-35 fighter bombers, which were seen gathering at Al Muwafaq Air Base in Jordan, and support aircraft like the KC-46 aerial refueling tanker at Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia. At 9:45 a.m. local time on Saturday, the 28th of February, President Trump ordered these units into combat as he launched Operation Epic Fury. This was unusual. Epic Fury and the simultaneous Israeli Operation Roaring Lion were almost certainly intended to launch at night. But the CIA had learned that Ali Khamenei, Iran's supreme leader, would be meeting with his top officials on Saturday morning inside his secure compound here in Tehran. This was an opportunity that was simply too good to miss, so the timing of the attack was moved. Israel was tasked with striking this gathering, but for that attack to get through, Iran's air defenses first had to be disabled. We don't know exactly how this happened. One way could have been an initial strike by US and Israeli F-35s flying from Jordan and the Lincoln aircraft carrier, as well as Nevatim Air Base here. These are stealth jets, almost invisible to enemy radar, and are designed to hunt down and destroy enemy anti-air systems. This kind of mission is known as SAYAD, or suppression of enemy air defenses. For Iran, these defenses include long-range systems like the Russian S-200 and S-300, medium-range like the Talash and Khordad-15, and short-range like the Chinese HQ-7. The F-35's job would have been to take out as many of these systems as possible without being spotted. On this mission, they would likely have been accompanied by F-22s. These are also stealth aircraft, but have a slightly different role. They are air superiority fighters, and their job would have been to protect the F-35s from any Iranian jets trying to shoot them down. Iran's fighters include the Russian Su-22 and the MiG-29. Once Iran's air defenses were destroyed, the way would have been cleared for the follow-up strike. Another option would have been a cyber attack to disable the same air defenses without needing to put planes in the air. Israel and the US are masters of this kind of warfare, having unleashed the Stuxnet virus on Iran sometime before 2010. With the air defenses destroyed or disabled, the Israelis launched a follow-up strike with long-range air-to-ground missiles likely carried by F-16s. This is known as a decapitation strike, removing the heads of the regime so they cannot coordinate its defense. The Israelis succeeded in flattening the presidential compound and killing Iran's supreme leader, along with the IRGC commander, the defense minister, and many others. Next came a wave of American Tomahawk cruise missiles, we presume fired by US destroyers in the Arabian Sea and Mediterranean. These strikes focused on Iran's missile bases and navy, with the aim of limiting its ability to strike back. We think the targets included Tabriz here, the site of a major IRGC base and an underground missile bunker. This is where Iran stores Ghada medium-range ballistic missiles, which would have been used to fire at Israel. Also targeted were Konarak and Bandar Abbas, two naval bases in the south. These bases housed warships and submarines that could have been used to attack US ships in the Arabian Sea or tankers in the Persian Gulf, through which much of the world's oil flows. All of these were sunk without ever putting to sea. With Iran's command and control in disarray, its air defense, missile and naval sites smoldering, a much wider range of assets were then brought to bear. These included US MQ-9 Reapers, B-2 Spirit bombers, and, for the first time, Lucas drones, a copy of the Iranian Shahed. Aerial refueling tankers also got airborne, allowing fighters to stay in the air for longer and keep up the bombing. Within the first 12 hours, The US and Israel said they had carried out a combined 900 strikes centered in these areas. Of those, Isfahan and Bushehr are linked to Iran's nuclear program. Isfahan also contains Iranian arms factories, as does Shiraz. And Kermanshah, Minab, and Zanjan are linked to the IRGC and Iranian military. If we go back to the tapes, then we can see how that played out in real life. Here's Trump announcing the start of the attacks. In his speech, he makes it clear that one of the main targets is the regime.
Our objective is to defend the American people by eliminating imminent threats from the Iranian regime, a vicious group of very hard, terrible people.
And here's footage of smoke rising over Tehran, thought to be from the strike on Khamenei's compound by the Israelis. This image shows an Israeli F-16 carrying a Rampage missile, a long-range air-to-ground warhead that could have been used for the presidential palace strike. This satellite image, published a short time later, confirmed the strike had been a success. And after claim and counterclaim, Iranian state TV eventually confirmed that Khamenei had been killed as the anchor broke down in tears live on air. Meanwhile, footage released by the US military showed an F-35 taking off from one of its carriers, cruise missile launches from its missile destroyers, and strikes on Iranian air defenses. Here's footage of dozens of cruise missiles reported to be flying over Iraq. If that's true, they would have been fired from the Med and perhaps heading for a site like Tabriz. Satellite images subsequently revealed the destruction at Tabriz and Konarak. Here you can see how tunnels at Tabriz had collapsed, while here and here you can see warships burning in port at Konarak and Bandar Abbas. The attacks prompted a wide-ranging retaliatory strike campaign by Iran, initially targeting US bases and Israel. Perhaps the worst of the damage was caused at US 5th Fleet headquarters in Bahrain. At least one missile and at least one drone were filmed hitting the base, destroying 3 large hangars and at least 1 radar dome. 5th Fleet is responsible for US naval operations in and around the Arabian Peninsula, including the naval forces being used against Iran. Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, America's largest base in the Middle East, which hosts some 10,000 personnel, also came under Iranian attack. Video taken at night showed a Patriot system trying to engage at least one Iranian ballistic missile flying towards the base. One interceptor appears to detonate mid-air, potentially meaning it intercepted an unseen Iranian missile, but the other flies wide of its target. A third interceptor is then fired, but also misses before the Iranian missile strikes the base. A Patriot battery was also active at Ali Al Salem Air Base in Kuwait. Again, Iran seems to have targeted this base with ballistic missiles, at least one of which was intercepted just in the nick of time. But it seems more got through. Later in the day, smoke was seen rising from the compound. Israel, meanwhile, was targeted by yet more missiles, at least one of which made it through its air defenses and hit Tel Aviv. At least one person was killed and dozens more were injured after a large explosion wrecked a residential building in the city. Observers said a steady stream of missiles were fired at Israel overnight the first night of fighting, in salvos of 2 or 3 at a time. Shahed drones were also launched, one of which was shown being shot down before reaching its target. Israel said a total of 10 drones were launched on the first day, though all of them were successfully intercepted. But Iran's strikes were not simply retaliatory. Civilian areas in neighboring states soon found themselves being hit as well. Dramatic footage from Bahrain showed the moment a Shahed drone slammed into a skyscraper, showering debris into the street. The same explosion was captured by someone inside the tower, just a few floors below where the drone exploded. It's not clear whether the tower was deliberately struck. Shahed drones follow a pre-programmed route to their targets. If whoever programmed the route is unaware of tall buildings in the way, they can be hit by accident. One strike which did not appear accidental was at the Palm Jumeirah, a 5-star hotel that's popular with Westerners in Dubai. Footage shows a Shahed-type drone dive-bombing into the hotel, suggesting that was its intended target. A later strike on Dubai airport reinforced this conclusion. The Burj Al Arab hotel also caught fire, though reportedly from falling debris rather than a deliberate strike. So, why is this happening now, and how long might it last? Well, back in December, protests broke out in Iran demanding an end to decades of theocratic rule that has impoverished large parts of the country. Donald Trump signaled his support for these demonstrations, warning the Iranian regime that any attack on the protesters would be met with force. Iran's Supreme Leader ignored those threats, and in early January is thought to have massacred some 30,000 of his own people. But no reprisal came. It is thought Trump wanted to carry out strikes just a few days later, when the Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier arrived in the region. But the Saudis and Israelis persuaded him not to, arguing there were not enough US forces to protect them from counterattacks. So Trump went back to the negotiating table, sending Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff to talk nuclear weapons with the Iranians, while at the same time meeting with Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House, presumably to plan their next move if or when those talks failed. Stalling for time also allowed him to move more military assets to the region, a second aircraft carrier and a huge number of jets. Then, in late February, the talks predictably stalled. The Iranians were dragging their feet about giving up their stockpile of enriched uranium, which could be used to make nukes. And they said they weren't willing to negotiate at all over their long-range missiles or proxy militias either. That seems to have been what prompted Trump to order the military into action. The aim of the campaign seems to be to force a change of regime in Iran by weakening the government to the point that protesters can take over. It is also intended to destroy Iran's missiles, its nuclear sites, its navy, and the IRGC, the fanatical army that is loyal to the regime. In an interview with the Daily Mail, Trump said he expects the mission to last at least 4 weeks, though how he plans to bring fighting to a close isn't exactly clear. If Iran's regime does fall and a new leader takes over, that might put a swift end to the fighting, assuming that new leader has enough control to order the military to stop. But that's a big if. We don't know who might take over, and if a power struggle breaks out, the country could see sectarian fighting or even civil war break out. Or the regime may survive. Even though most of its leaders and generals are dead, the IRGC shows no sign of throwing down its weapons just yet. If it simply refuses to give up and continues firing drones and missiles at the US and its allies, Trump will have no choice but to keep the war going. Sooner or later, they will run out of ammo, especially if the US and Israel keep bombing their ammo dumps and weapons factories. But exactly how long they can last is anyone's guess. Whatever happens next, one thing seems absolutely certain. There's going to be no end to war in the Middle East anytime soon. That's where this tape stops, but we'll be back soon to play you through another episode of War on Tape.